Hi guys, welcome to hashtag no filters number 24. Just looking at the other device, January the 4th, 2021. Joyous New Year to you all, wherever you are in the world right now. Thanks so much for joining me either live in the future, who knows what timeline it will be. Just to let you know, it's just me again today. Sabina's doing her thing in the world, and we've got a pretty much of a doozy for you. I've entitled today's show Chat 2021 and Beyond. What's going to happen? So, big disclaimer before we begin. I want to say that whatever I share is not the truth. It's a possibility. I'm going to basically look at three key areas. What I perceive is really going on behind the scenes. What that then means in terms of what might actually turn up in the world, not just this year, but the next few years. And it's long term and this is not an overnight thing. And what you can do about it to make life a lot more easy for you as you travel through this. So if you're really happy with the way things are, or at least you are really in tune with the mainstream narrative of how things are occurring, and you're not open to any other possibility, and you just want to stick with what's being told, that's super cool. But this is not going to be for you, because I'm going to share not only the mainstream narrative, but another three narratives. So four narratives of what I believe or what is being shared in terms of what's occurring in the world, and what I can see truth in all of them. And then from those four narratives of what's going on, what all of them have as a common thread in terms of what we can look forward to, what's going to be occurring, what kind of a ride this is going to be. It's going to be a hell of a ride. And then from that space, what you can do for your own journey, if you wish to. Remember, sharing ideas, insights, some kind of perspective, knowledge, experience, as opposed to the truth. And really, this is about giving you a panorama of aspects for you to see what resonates for you. Because if nothing else, what I share today and share going forward and have shared in the past is going to be about, or has been about, and is about you finding your truth. Okay, your truth, guys. So on that, let's go for it. And if you do join live or even in the future, please do put a comment if you have something to say. If you put a comment, I can actually see it. Other than that, I can't tell who's on, as I use StreamYard, which streams to different platforms at the same time. As always, in the description, there will be links to my email, cheryl@joyfulbodies.co.uk, to Facebook pages for Sabina and I, and also a link for this YouTube channel. So let's get going. So what's going on, guys? What's really going on? Okay, I'm going to share four narratives, four perspectives. Just notice what comes up for you as I share them. The first one is what we're being made aware of in the mainstream media and what our leaders are telling us, normally primarily through media. So that there's a large-scale illness across the world. The only way to deal with it is to primarily take some kind of inoculation, and we were needed to be under lots of control, restriction on movement, on individual freedoms, shutdown of our economy in terms of people's ability to work, and we're all looking outside of us to be told from a power outside of us what we can and can't do. And the restraints getting tighter and tighter and tighter. That's narrative number one. Narrative number two is that actually this pandemic is actually a smokescreen for a financial reset. And what I mean by that is that our financial system is massively unstable, has been built on the concept of debt and what they call a fiat currency, which means it has no real value. And when you print more and more money, hi Tanya, thanks for joining, darling. When you print more money, it just depreciates the value, and that a lot of money from various funds has been taken. So there's a big hole, and basically the system's unsustainable. So there's the narrative that number two, that the financial system is going to be completely replaced by a digital platform, which will be controlled by a select few people. You and I will only have digital accounts, which literally means it can be turned on or off. If you've ever had a card stopped or locked your own card with your PIN number, it's pretty easy. So you can imagine if everything was in a technological platform, it'd be very easy to turn it on and off, and that it almost is part of what people are deeming a communist approach of you'll have credit. If you're a good citizen, you'll have access to certain amounts of money and where you can or can't go. And if you're not so good, you won't. And that part of that will be that to be tracked, you'll all receive effectively inoculations which are tagged by the nanotechnology or align us with AI more, so you can be tracked accordingly. And you'll have a sort of universal basic income. If you're interested in some of that, the World Economic Forum talks about this. So that's the second narrative. The pandemic is a smokescreen for a global financial reset, and we will become more transhuman, tightly linked with AI, and everything will be monitored. Won't have to work necessarily, although there are talks that we may work for just a few big corporates, and there will be our choices will be based on whoever's controlling that digital system. That's the second narrative. The third narrative, which is closely aligned to the second one, is that that global reset to basically have a control structure of our financial system and therefore control of the mass populace is actually being exposed, hijacked, overthrown by a certain president in another country. That people have real Marmite response to, and that the digital system will be in place, but it will have precious metals back in it. It won't be controlled by a few. Everybody's wealth across various countries will come up to what they call a parity, more equal. So there won't be mass wealth and mass divide between wealth and poverty. There'll be a lot more equanimity across countries, and we will still have our freedoms to choose. So that's like a twist on the second one. And it was meant to be a battle between these two. The fourth narrative is that actually there's a mass evolution in the human psyche. That we're actually awakening to a whole new level of personal freedom. Our bodies are changing. Our own DNA is changing based on some kind of internal instructions that we have. And then what we're seeing in the world is almost all those control systems, all the things that have been pushed into our psyche, all the programming, all the things that have been done in the name of safety, but actually have been harmful to us, that have been concealed, that stuff is actually coming up. So all the intense control we have on the planet at the moment is actually those systems and all that oppression and all that, all the things that have been hidden are actually breaking through the surface. So it's almost like 180 degrees. We think we're being tied down and restricted more. I get that on a physical level, it looks like we are. And this fourth narrative is saying actually all the corruption, all the restriction, all the control of society is actually breaking out of the roots and being coming to the surface. And actually, as us, the individual humans in our own awakening, are doing that. And that we will be breaking that all free. So we're seeing almost like, if you ever get a spot and it's looking really painful, it's going to be great when you squeeze it out, but it's not necessarily that cool. It's kind of like it's coming out, right? So it looks messy and crappy. So 4 narratives. 1, there's a main illness on the planet. We have to restrict. We have to be inoculated. Our economy has to be shut down. More. Control from external. That's the first narrative. Second narrative is a smokescreen for a global financial reset, digital, again, by a body that wants to control, an elite, if you like, that wants to control, or will control, because it'll be unelected in many respects, that wants to control the masses, and your accounts can be turned on and off. You won't necessarily own anything. You'll be aligned to AI, more. And a kind of credit system like the communist concept. So that's narrative 2. Narrative 3, that's being hijacked so that it becomes a system where, yes, it's still digital, but we will have freedoms. Countries will be brought up more to equanimity. All the corruption and various things that have been going on and suppressed will come to the surface. That's narrative 3. Narrative 4 is that we're awakening on a whole new level to our own sort of personal power, if you like. And because of that, we're seeing all the cray in the world. And our biological, our DNA evolution will be incredibly what word can I find? Enlightening, and that we'll find out we're not who we thought we were. We'll get to see that our past is not what we've been told. Our bloodline is not what we've been told, and much more besides. So there's 4 narratives. I've gone over that a couple of times, depending when you came in. Obviously, I'm on a bit of a rapid fire. And I don't want to get too involved in going down the rabbit hole in each one of those. It's been a fascinating adventure to explore each of them. And I have my perspectives as opposed to what reads true for me. But I wanted to give you an idea of what's out there. And just to see what sits with you, what makes you go, what the hell? What makes you go, that makes sense? Just notice. So with those 4 narratives, there is an overlap. And so in terms of what 2021 holds, each of those narratives has a perspective as to what the year holds. Not just the year, the next 5 years. Some say the next decade. So where we normally look at a new year, we go, oh, what's this year going to have? New Year's resolutions. Oh, we hope it's not going to be like last year or whatever. Particularly with 2020 being such a pinnacle year in terms of our world and how we interact in the world. And most of us never haven't seen anything like this. Then it's going to be very easy for many of us to go, oh my God, just want to see the back of it. Let me just take this or whatever. Let me just have a pass to get to certain places or not, just to get rid of it all. It's not going to be like that at all, guys. You are not going to get off like a very easy in terms of, oh, if I just comply with everything, it's all going to go away. This is not going away in the way you may hope for it. And I'm going to make statements. And I have to qualify this again, that I'm not trying to tell you what you need to believe or what is the truth. I'm sharing it from the perspective of this is what I can see as a common theme. Doesn't mean it is the ultimate truth, but there is definitely a common theme through these narratives. And I can see what's going on in the world for myself. And I've always had an ability to see what's going on behind the scenes and almost what's going to be coming since I was a kid. So it doesn't have to be your truth. I'm going to share it for you to have at least an awareness that this is some of the stuff that's out there. So we're not just going back to where we've been before, pre-2020. Our life is never going back to that again. If you get nothing from this, take that away. If you don't want to listen to this anymore, you want to sign off from this video, that's fine. But no, we are not going back. There's no pulling the duvet over your head, hoping it was a bad dream, and that when you wake up, it'll be great again like it was, which is questionable, isn't it? Because I used to hear people complain and moan about life pre-2020, about all the things they weren't happy with. So is it a bit rose-tinted glasses? I think maybe. The common theme across those 4 narratives is that there is going to be basically a push between the desire to control and lock down and take freedoms on one, and a completely opposing force of rebellion, breaking structures, breaking systems, questioning, people saying I've had enough, and uprising individually and collectively. So this massive like smack, right? Literally opposing forces are going to be occurring. And so what does that really mean on a day-to-day basis, right? So literally, there will not be a system that doesn't get challenged. Political, legal, medical, financial, education, technology, health, your fundamental freedoms as an individual, the way you view the world, your own psyche, your own social conditioning. There is not a system that will not be affected, challenged, overhauled, torn apart on the planet. Sounds radical, doesn't it? But is it so radical? Hey, yay! Time to say. Is it so radical? Thanks for the comments, Tanya. I really appreciate you being here. Because if you look at the moment, is there a system that hasn't been affected anyway? Politically, in terms of how our leadership is, the way we do business, that's definitely been affected. The way we interact socially, that's definitely been affected. Our financial system has been affected. Our medical system has been affected. Our education system has been affected. The way we're socially conditioned has been affected. There's nothing, our health, mental, emotional, physical, there's nothing that hasn't been touched anyway. So that's not really that shocking, is it? The systems have already been completely challenged. It's just a case of whether they're challenged from the perspective of them being used to control or put society in a particular direction versus them being challenged by the people, the masses, who are saying, wait a minute, these systems, do we want them? Do they even work? And why the hell would they be challenged? Well, let's say that the first narrative of a government's telling us what we can and can't do and presenting to us that there's a world crisis and that we have to follow certain protocols which are getting tighter and tighter. By definition, if you keep squeezing, restricting, something will burst. If you look what's currently happened or has happened, there's been the initial restrictions, then it's backed off a bit, then it's got tighter, next set of restrictions, and then it's backed off a bit, then it's got tighter, backed off. And the time period between those has got shorter and shorter and shorter. Just look from March 2020 through to January 2021. I'm not going to go through each of the stages, and depends where you are in the world, because obviously it's relevant to your country. But in the UK, that's definitely happened. So initial lockdown, then we came out, then we got into sort of tiers, and then they were released, and the tiers got more aggressive. And then there was promises, and then there was another lockdown, and then there was promises of being able to spend time with people at Christmas, and then that got taken, then New Year, and blah, blah, blah. So it's slowly, call it a psyops in military maneuvers. You kind of squeeze and you release a little bit, not full. You squeeze and you release just partially, and you squeeze a bit more and release just partially. So it's almost like that whole, if you've ever got into a hot bath, you kind of dip, first put your foot in, it's like, oh, it's really hot. But then you slowly kind of, you take it out and you put it in again, oh, it's still quite hot. You take it out and you put it in again. But now your body's got a bit adjusted to it. The temperature's probably pretty much the same as it was, because it's only maybe within a minute, right? But you've adjusted to it, and it's the same thing, and then you get more of your body immersed, sorry. So it's the same thing. Squeeze, relax, squeeze, relax, squeeze, relax. You notice it's getting tighter and tighter. And so those systems are already being affected. So if you squeeze people, and in the UK, we've had financial assistance during this time, but most of the assistance has gone to big corporates. So if you're employed, it's been a much more comfortable ride than if you're self-employed or run a limited company. There's a lot of people that haven't had financial support who are going to be really struggling in that perspective. And they're starting to push back, starting to see cracks. I'm starting to see a lot more people questioning, speaking up against it. Just people walking past me. Literally, I'm out walking, there'll be somebody walking past me who's like, yeah, but they keep changing their minds. What we can and can't do, it's confusing. There's no clear path. I'm not really sure about it. And this is like some sort of more mature people. I've noticed people just going about their business a little more, particularly over the Christmas, with people who are popping here and there. There's more people being more vocal on social media. So you squeeze people, they will pop. And what happens, of course, at the end of our financial year, which is end of March or beginning of April 2021, all the support in terms of the furlough scheme, the government basically paying money to keep employees employed, all the debts, all the payment breaks for things like rentals, eviction notices, all of that will come to an end. So even those who have been supported, if that does end, that net drops. And obviously, think about people who have been maybe living on credit card or have used all their savings. Those bank interest rates haven't changed for your credit card. It's still 16%, 17%, 20%. 23% APR, whereas the bank rate is actually like 0.5%, 0%, almost going towards negative. So that gap, there's been some support, but it's about to drop out, and people will blow when they suddenly feel that there's nothing there anymore. That's based on today. Anything can change, but that's based on today. So it's likely that would cause an eruption. That one narrative would cause an eruption. And it's already starting to crack every time there's a change in the tier. 1 minute you're going out, 1 minute you're going to work, then you're being told to stay. 1 minute your kids are going to school, then they're being told to stay home. Right? Confusion, confusion, confusion. Most people's systems aren't equipped. They don't have the resilience to handle that. So they will start to crack. And if they've been at home for 9 months, and they're not used to that, then they're very social. They spend a lot of their time looking outside and look for external stimulation. Maybe they live alone. Maybe they're struggling being with a partner. Most people are going to have been feeling pressure. And if they've been watching the mainstream media, which is obviously, there's a constant stream of, be careful, this is going to get you, this could hurt you, things are getting worse. So that, for most people's psyches, is stress creating. So people explode to release that pressure. So that's why that first narrative, people would uprise. And the second narrative about the whole financial global reset, if that's occurring, and there are lots of people who are financial specialists who are saying it's going on, they're seeing the signs. If people find out about that, or start researching it or questioning it and looking at things, people will blow up when they hear about that. Because if somebody says to you, hey, we're going to bring in a new financial system that basically we will totally control it, we can turn it on and off at any time, we want to make sure you have to comply, you may or may not own anything, which is the whole World Economic Forum thing. You can look on the website for it if you want to see. And there are various people speaking about this. And not to say this is true, but it's just part of what's out there as a narrative. And yeah, so we're going to possibly devalue your money, your currency. In fact, there won't really be any currencies. There'll just be some kind of credit thing. We'll also be able to say where you can and can't shop. We could possibly say where you can and can't go, because we're having to track you in terms of what your ID is, your access to your funds. But we want to make sure it's you that's accessing them. So we maybe want to track you may not have it on your phone, but we won't even want to put it in your body because it's going to be easier. And if you're not carrying anything like cash, it's much easier, isn't it, to scan your wrist when you go to pay for something. So that's that agenda. If you find that out and you're not happy with that idea, you'd probably blow up with that too. And so that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because if that is allegedly happening in the background, behind the smoke screen of our current worldwide pandemic, why not just announce it? Hey guys, we've had a financial system, it doesn't work anymore. As you know, debt to income ratio, basically most countries are running at 99%, even greater debt to GDP as in what they make. There's nothing there to sustain it. It's been an agreement. Some funds we've basically taken the money from, so we can't even pay out pensions in some places. So if you let the people know that's happened and you're going to completely reset the system, people, by definition of used to a system, will generally uprise. So that's the second narrative and why there might be uprising, as that comes out more and more. The third narrative and why there might be uprising, which is about where there are those trying to say, keep the weird flag flying. Am I the weird one, or is it all just weird? Very likely. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Speaking what we are aware of, not to say is the truth, but to bring some light on things and go, damn, could that be true? Am I seeing that? What is going on? So the third narrative, which is basically saying that global reset, which is meant to be in the hands of a few, controlling the many, is being overturned or being hijacked. So it becomes a system for the many, but will be digital, possibly still some currency. That's a really interesting one, because a lot of people would say that's in the realm of conspiracy. Who knows? Conspiracy, I believe, is a term that was coined by the CIA who basically said if it didn't follow the mainstream narrative, it was deemed conspiracy. So I think I'm seeing quite a lot of that because there's a huge amount of censorship, as you may or may not know, on YouTube and Facebook, so Twitter, social platforms in the mainstream media. There are many things that are being reported by alternative medias or smaller papers, not so much in the UK, but in the US particularly, smaller broadcasting and independent broadcasting channels who've done their own fact checking back to government papers, government reports, gone direct to government, particularly in the US, because obviously you imagine there's a lot going on out there election-wise still. And there's a big disparity between the mainstream media and what's being said by these others. So there's a lot of censorship there. So it's very interesting. So even if things are being exposed, most people aren't aware of it because the mainstream media aren't reporting it. And it's almost this interesting thing that, in many respects, you can't really tell people, which is kind of ironic because here I'm attempting to share some narratives with you on what one could perceive is going to occur. But ultimately, none of this really matters because we're going to go through this period, and each is going to make a choice. And as we ride through it and make our choices, then we're going to really see for real, aren't we? We're going to see for real what's going to occur. So I'm attempting to give you a nice landscape picture, paint a landscape, or tell you some different storylines of possibilities. But the proof will be in the pudding in terms of what really occurs as we walk through those timelines. So in this third narrative, of where this hijacked system of trying to control us through a financial reset is being opposed, and everything is starting to be questioned and revealed, again through various systems, the legal structure, and it's very easy to see in the USA with the election thing. There's an attempt to show the corruption within the legal system, attempt to show what's been going on in terms of the medicalization, that part over there. Attempt to show corruption in terms of particularly, again, political leaders within different states. There's talk about that Mr. T, the President T, has oh, I've got reflashed. The things that have been hidden are actually available for people to start to see, and that there's going to be a lot of exposure in terms of the level of corruptions, leaders, celebrities, people that we've looked up to and revered, and that there won't be a takeover by communist China, and that the US will prevail, which is an interesting one. So again, if some of that stuff comes out, if turns out to be true, then people will uprise, right? There'll be panic. There will be people pushing. There already are people pushing in the US. People pushing saying there was massive corruption with the election. Others saying there wasn't. So already a groundswell, and that's going to increase in January. Hi guys, I'm back. I think I've obviously upset somebody. Does seem quite coincidental, doesn't it? As I'm talking about the US and their system and what's going on, and I get shut down. This video gets ended. Cute. Could be coincidence, maybe not. But obviously there will be some kind of uprising there, and that's definitely, I feel it starting to get ready to crescendo. And on the fourth narrative, if there is this internal evolution in our biology, our DNA, an awakening of us starting to look and question everything we've been told, and some of us are in different stages of that, then by definition, we're going to push back on all the very systems that exist. That's going to happen. And even if that fourth narrative, even if we aren't evolving, which of course we always are in many respects, there are people that speak about different aspects of astrological awarenesses, what's going on in terms of planetary. You may not be into any of that, and that's totally fine. If nothing else, we are energetic, or we respond to frequencies. Yes, everything's got a certain tone, if you like. You can speak to that in quantum physics. It doesn't really matter what you speak to, but by definition, the mere fact you can hear my voice change in pitch is because it has a different frequency. The mere fact that you can see different colors, they have a different frequency. There are energetic waves, particles that are bouncing off you and you're interacting with. So we're influenced by things moving around us. Yes, you're influenced by the signals from your phone, from Wi-Fi, from traffic, through chemicals in food. You're influenced by all of that. So by definition, if there are things that are moved in terms of planetary alignments and the energies they have and give off, it's like the sun gives off a certain energy, the moon gives off another one, which of course we understand through tides and tidal, and also increase in depression and suicide attempts around the full moons. We are influenced by all of this. So in the current system of astrology, they talk about this massive awakening in terms of this will be a year, 2021 will be a year where there'll be society will be pushing up and there will be rebellion. Again, guys, don't take any of it as true. Just sharing perspectives here. So the theme through 2021 is that there will be a pushing, a questioning, a revealing of what's been going on, what's been hidden, what's been suppressed. There are many, many things that we've believed, we've been told. If you think about history, for example, most people in general live less than 100 years, as far as we're aware. So it could be quite easy to change history, wouldn't it? Every couple hundred years to rewrite what's in the history books. Now, we may say that's not a possibility, but how do you know? Because as generations die off, you can tweak it. Generally, once people have left school, they don't necessarily look at the history books and what's being said. And this is really interesting, actually. And again, the US is a very classic example. It's very interesting. There's a lot of exploration as to what occurs and what has occurred. And obviously, they're ruled by their constitution, as we are, to some degree, something called a Magna Carta. But there was some discussion about that in their schools, they are teaching or withholding bits of the constitution, as in not teaching parts of it, or they're changing parts of it and teaching slightly different versions of it. And so it's very interesting, isn't it? Something that was written in 1776, I believe. Here we are in 2020, 2021, and they're teaching different versions of it. It's only 200-ish years. So it is possible to teach something different to how it was, and for people not to even question it. So things that have been changed, things that have been hidden. There's a lot of very dark stuff around child sex trafficking, abuse, trafficking of women. It's so dark. I'm not even going to share that in this video. But if some of that stuff comes up, and most people are very sensitive around children and how children are treated, even if you don't have children, it's almost like this one precious thing that most people hold or would agree with, that to harm them is unacceptable. To harm them sexually is like pushes a lot of buttons for people. And if it's been done on a mass scale, which is, some have said it has been done across the whole world, not only from political and financial leaders or whatever, but also in our celebrities in varying ways, not just the odd individual here and there, but as a mainstream thing. If that type of thing has occurred and comes out, that's going to cause a bit of a ripple, isn't it, through the world? And again, not saying it's true, not saying it hasn't. I've got my own viewpoint. It's very interesting in the UK. Jim will fix it. When I was a kid, I used to think, I don't trust that guy. He freaks me out. He's creepy. And of course, after his death, it came out that throughout his time in the BBC, there was a huge amount of abuse of young girls. And there's some very interesting papers, documents written on this in terms of the length of the case, how long this behavior was going on, which is accessible on the web. If you're actually curious about actually exploring some of these things and seeing what's going on out there, I'm going to suggest you might want to use DuckDuckGo, which is a browser. Duck as in D-U-C-K, duck, D-U-C-K, go, G-O. It's a really interesting browser in that you use it as a browser or have it as an app on your phone, in that it doesn't seem to censor or filter what comes back from search results. And also it doesn't track you as you go from one thing to another. So if I put the same search terms in Google and DuckDuckGo, I get very different results back. And there's things that come up on DuckDuckGo which speak to each of these narratives that I can't find on Google. So that might be interesting for you to do your own little exploration if you're curious. But it's not so much about going down the rabbit hole and exploring all these different narratives, although I have clearly over the last 9 months. And then I kind of got to December 2020, went, done. That's enough. It's been very interesting to look at these perspectives. I know what's true for me more and more and more anyway, but I've definitely had more of appreciation of our geopolitical stance on the planet, and more of an appreciation of our financial systems. Already had an appreciation of the medical, legal, things have got clearer in terms of how our current systems are. So for me, it's been amazing to look at it from that perspective. So hey, whatever knocks your socks off, if that's fun for you, go down the rabbit hole. But what's going to be really, really key here is what do you do going forward? Because irrespective of which narrative you choose to align with, agree with, and you don't have to align or agree with any of them, and there can be a sliver of truth through all of them, which I hope I've kind of illustrated here, that whether it's the mainstream media and our worldwide pandemic narrative, whether it's the global reset with control systems, whether it's the global reset of the finance, but to make it free and fair and equanimity across the planet, or whether it's the narrative that we're awakening biologically, our DNA is changing, we're getting access to different abilities, we are the ones that are causing the mass chaos in the world because our own awakening is happening. It's almost like we're pushing out the crap and we're seeing it on the surface. Where it was hidden, we're now pushing it out of the shadows. So it's actually us driving it. Doesn't matter which one of those 4 narratives one goes for or anything else. We are going to see there is a squeeze in between freedom and control. I think that's undeniable. So with that, what can you do? Because if you go down the route of just staying with the control, as in trying to follow the rules, and the rules get tighter and tighter and tighter, and you give up more and more of your freedom to choose or your free will to live a life in the way that you might want to, then one, you're always at the mercy of whatever happens. And as it continues to change, as a goalpost change, there's that constant stress, isn't there? Because you don't know where you're going, particularly if you're looking outside yourself. If we continue to look outside ourselves to be told what to do, that's like the puppet on the string thing. If you've ever played tug of war and you've been the rope and people pulled you either side, it's not very comfortable. So continuing to allow or focus on that external system to tell you will be stressful and will get more stressful. And particularly if the financial aid gets taken away and you're relying on one source or a very limited number of sources, that's going to really hurt. If you're going to follow the idea that you're fighting against the idea there is a global reset financial system, and you're trying to find ways to how you can get around that, whether you're investing in cryptocurrency, whether you're looking at precious metals, whether you're hoarding food and water. Because if you think about it, also with the restrictions and controls, like an example in the UK, we've just done Brexit. If people are not going to work so much, people are being put into quarantine, then of course our supply chains will get squashed and squeezed. So even if one doesn't buy into the idea that there are other narratives, just by definition of what we're doing by locking down the world, there is restriction, there is less available. So the longer you do that, the more of an impact that has. So bear that in mind. So yeah, with the financial reset bit, if you're trying to find a way around it, well, you're still kind of at the effect of the system, really, aren't you? Because you're pushing back against it. You're trying to find a way to protect yourself, which is still an effect of puppeteering, interestingly enough. And if you're waiting for somebody to save us, which narrative 3 is that the PET, the President T, as that he and various other people are looking to fight against that second agenda. But then again, we're looking outside ourselves and waiting for him or them to save us. The world's a pretty big place. So even if this person or these people are going to go around the world saving the world, or at least assisting the world, that still will create some kind of disruption. So again, if you're looking outside, we're waiting for that, we're still at the effect of being on a puppet string to some degree, right? The fourth narrative, which basically says we're the ones that are causing this change, that's interesting because if you start to notice there's a sense of, you might have started to notice there's a sense of whether it's frustration, anger, questioning, a desire to just to take certain paths where you may have suppressed who you are and what you are in this world to fit into mainstream society. And you might have done that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. If we are awakening at another level, well, then actually, this is a path that may support you more in that if you start to follow those inner whispers, those inner yearnings, that ability to start to believe in self more rather than the outside world, well, then you're always in charge of that, aren't you? If the outside world is constantly telling you different stories, or you're waiting for somebody to tell you something or to do something for you, the only true choice or moment of power is when you're believing or starting to see that you're the one that's in charge. So let's explore this a bit more. Oh yeah, we're at about 40 minutes, so we've got a little time here. If you're always going to wait for somebody to tell you what to do, it's like you're always going to wait for someone to tell you what to do, what you can and can't do, that's going to be unnerving. You've basically given over your life to others in the hope that they will give you something that they've promised, which you've seen for many years has not been the case. How many times as a leader said something, promised something, and then not delivered it? That's not an uncommon event. Bring it more close to home. How many times people got in a relationship with, whether it's friends or an intimate partner, on the promise of something, but it's turned out differently? How many times have people taken a job or studied in a particular direction, a degree, and the belief it will give them something, or that, yeah, some kind of reward, some kind of door opener, and it's not actually turned out that way? How many times have we gone out for a meal, really excited about going to this particular restaurant, looking forward to this food, and it's not turned out to be as good, or it's turned out to be different to what we thought? It's like it's a common theme. When we're looking out there, it often doesn't live up to what we may have in here. So actually removing our destiny, the choice for our life from out there to in here, which if it's naturally evolving and opening up, if that path is occurring, actually gives us a lot more control in a weird way. And so if you actually start to see yourself, and as it happens, it does parallel to what's been my own life journey, which is always been about people, myself and others, having their freedom to be themselves. As Tanya said, keep the weird flag flying. Little kids are inherently themselves. There is no filtering. They're so alive with that. They're so present with what's going through their bodies. They're present with what they feel. They know where they want to go. They know what they want to do. They are potent mother, because aren't they? And we do everything to try and contain that. If you think about it, we tell them, we withdraw love from them. We send them to social conditioning of schooling. We reward or punish them to make sure they fit in. So we become a cookie cutter with slightly different decorations on the cookie. but it's still, we turn out to be a certain shape of cookie with slightly different icing, slightly different color sprinkles on top, but pretty much the same thing. There's a fairly set boundary, which makes it very neat and tidy for an external system for having given away our power, the decision for our lives to others, fundamentally in terms of structures. All the systems I spoke about: political, legal, financial, medical, educational, social, health, technology, consumerism. Having kind of given those away or got other big structures to look after them for us, it's made it very comfortable for us just to poodle along. And some could say that that's been by design. It's been a process over time to take individuality, slowly move from individuality to sameness, to conformness, just to make it easy for the masses of people. But we're not the same. We are unique. It's really fascinating to see so many movements on the planet where it's saying this life matters, that life matters, this gender matters, that gender matters. Everybody is amazing. And everybody can be a Charlie Hunt at the same time. We have a massive array of what we're capable of being. But what equates to richness, like nature, the richness of nature is this diversity. Each unique little species supports the whole ecosystem. You take them one out, and we know the effect. Take out the bumblebees, things don't get pollinated, it affects food production, so on and so forth. It changes tidal waves, everything changes. So what makes humans any different? We are unique. We are diverse. The more we try to become a homogenous mass, or being encouraged to be a homogenous mass, which fits nicely into little boxes-ish and follows the same kind of thing, society. We get born, we go to school, we get an education, we get married, we buy a house, we buy toys. We make some money to go on holiday, to buy stuff, to then give our kids some money, die. With the 7 or 7.5 billion of us on the planet, or however many there are, who knows? Is that it? Really? I don't know. Maybe it is, and that's totally cool. Maybe that's part of the ride of being here. Surely we all have unique gifts, talents, things that may have been hidden, things we've suppressed, maybe things that have only just coming online and awakening in us. So going forward this year, 2021 and beyond, because if you start to, as a system starts to crack, which they're going to one way or another, depending which narrative you tap into, or all four of them, systems are going to crack. People are going to start questioning. If government support gets taken, or if things get harder, if you think about it, a lot of small and medium enterprises, SMEs, we call them in the UK, are failing. You lock companies down for 9 months on and off, even with some financial support, when their rents become due again, because rent breaks obviously have been given, they're going to fail. So the big companies are getting more of a consumer base. Obviously, our big online shopping, our big supermarkets, they're getting more of the pie, and the small businesses are failing. You do that, you put the power into the hands of a few, again, more and more and more. If everybody's relying on just mainstream supermarkets or mainstream online shopping, easy to turn it on and off, right? Easy to control. So what can we do? I mean, I've kind of covered a whole heap of stuff here. I wasn't sure exactly how much I was going to cover, how deep I was going to go. So I would really recommend listening to this and watching this video multiple times, or downloading it, getting the audio, or whatever. Actually, I might put a link to the audio. I've got a Dropbox account. I might include that in the comments, but we'll see. What can you do, right? 1, start to listen to yourself. Start to listen to those impulses, whether it's frustration, excitement, wondering. Start to listen to that and not squash that down anymore. Start to let it come out. If nothing else, just within yourself. You don't need, you may want to share it with the world, which is what I'm doing. You may want to share it with a friend, but it's really about you sharing it with you, making at least stop censoring yourself, hiding bits of who you are. That pressure will continue to build if you don't. Let that out. Okay, so stop censoring who you are. Follow those impulses. When you get an insight, I really want to go and do this. I really feel like I need to do this. Oh, it feels like maybe I should go this way. Start testing that out. See what happens when you do. See where it leads and opens doors. People might call that intuition. I think it's more than that, but let's just go with that. Start to see what happens with that. Maybe start to think about how can you start to create more independence, not separate you from everybody else, because that's one of the lies we've been, I say lie, it's interesting, isn't it? One of the things we've been invited to do is fight each other all the time. This football team versus that football team, this country versus that country, this social class versus that social class, this skin color versus that, this gender versus that, right? Control, conquer, or divide and conquer, right? So I'm not talking about that kind of independence. I'm talking about the independence of, okay, well, if small businesses do fail, if there are less supplies of things coming into the country, if more money is being poured into big companies only, and they're having more control over what we can and can't access to, how can I provide for myself so I'm not so dependent on that? And particularly if information does come out that there's been mass corruption, that there's been mass coercion, that crimes against humanity, if you like, have been done, people are going to freak the shit out, aren't they? And when people freak out, things are unstable, which they already are. So what can you start to do to build some more resilience? Hey, most people have given up gardening in terms of planting vegetables, planting food. When I grew up, people still planted food in their gardens, partially. Most people don't know how to grow anything, or forgotten how to grow. Most people don't know how to hunt. Maybe it's an idea to start growing stuff. Maybe it's an idea to start seeing how you can clean up your body so your body's more efficient with the food it does take in. I did a great little chat on what do you mean food is optional a few shows ago. If you look on the YouTube channel, you'll see the link to all the shows, and you'll see that in there. So I'd go check that one out. You might find it quite insightful. So yeah, so how can you slightly more self-sufficient? Maybe you'll come together as neighbours. There's a lot of talk about us going from global to local, from being control down power and control to being more horizontal, collaborative, community, creative. There's a lot of talk about that being our next phase of evolution and what's going to occur. So maybe we'll start growing things together. Maybe that's going to be a key part. There's a lot to be said about actually start to know who's in your neighborhood. Start to get to know your neighbors if you haven't already. Whilst you're all plugged in, almost like, I don't know the movie, but there's a movie that Bruce Willis did where everybody's got effectively a drone that goes out into the world and represents them in the real world whilst they're all at home plugged into the machine. An avatar, if you like. No one leaves their houses. No one knows who each other is. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of quote unquote truth in many movies. They're often telling you, seeding what's coming, as do newspapers, I've noticed. Often they tell you, they put something in there as an article saying, oh, we're not going to do this. And then very soon, particularly with the lockdown, it happens a few days later, they completely 180. So a lot of what we see in entertainment, it actually, particularly sci-fi, is a little slice of what's coming. And often also what we're being told is almost 180 degrees to what has been truly happening. That's a whole nother discussion. So we've only got 5 minutes left. I'm not going to go there. So yeah, maybe that whole thing of not becoming those little plugged in silos of sitting there in front of your laptop or your screen all day and not going into the outside world, maybe branching out, getting to know your neighbours, starting to do things together. And I know lockdown and separation has all been put in place, social distancing. I know that doesn't mean you can't chat to them. We have a really cool little WhatsApp group on part of my community, which was set up for something else. But it's a way of also connecting and sharing things, which we've started to do, which is really, really cool. And I know there's something called Nextdoor in the UK. But anyway, good old-fashioned hi to neighbours, knocking on doors, whatever you choose, right? I'm not going to tell you. Starting to get to know your local community. That's another thing. How can you reinvent your finances? What can you do that's beyond money? You know, where you currently pay money out for things, you might want to look at what you can cut back on, which you may have already done, but you might want to look at what you can do, which isn't about money. You know, are there things that you can do for somebody because you have that skill, because it's fun for you? And then they may do something for you, or they may say, look, you did that for me. Hey, speak to my other friend. They'll help you out in this situation. So it's all this network. You might find there's ways of exchanging beyond money. And if money does get really tight for some people, if it isn't already, and there's a lot to say that that will occur one way or the other, particularly if financial aid is taken or there is a financial reset or whatever, there may be a gap for some people here. It might be months. It might be a year. It might be 2 years. What we're going through is not going to happen overnight. So we're going to need to find other ways beyond money. And this is not to say that even if all of our systems get challenged and torn apart, that we won't have money. We may well have money for quite a few years to come, but it may not be as relevant. And there are talks that even a couple of 100 years ago, there were statements that of people's accounts saying that they were discussing the idea of money, whether money was relevant. Did they really want to have money come into society? Because if they had money, maybe they could be controlled. Now, I've not seen these statements. There's a body of work that I follow by Dr. Jacqueline Hobbs. She's known as Oracle Girl, and she was sharing this, and it's very interesting. What if there are those statements that even 200 years ago, people were like, oh, I'm not sure about money coming in as an idea? You and I wouldn't even know. Because our history books tell us money's been around for longer. We wouldn't even know if that's true. So how can you look to go beyond even money and finance? Let me have a look here. I've got a massive list of stuff here. When you want to run and you want to just like put your head under the covers and you just think you can't go on, keep going. No matter how crazy this shit gets, keep going, right? You know, keep sharing that little bit of truth of who you are and not hiding you. Keep believing that you actually have the ability to ride the storm. Just a message come through. Keep looking at how you can grow your networks locally. Keep looking to see how you can be in your power more and more, even when you want to give up. And there will be, I'm going to leave it with this probably, over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, there may be a lot of people who can't adjust to what's going on. It may be just too much for them. That they may well leave, as in what we call die. Now, death is a big thing, and most people and society has been brought up to believe that death is to be avoided. It's uncomfortable. Maybe it's not. And if you think about what's been done in the world in terms of locking the world down to stop almost people dying, yet there are masses of people that are being harmed, that are living. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's an interesting thing of what we're doing in the name of so-called to keep people alive. There's so much that's going on in the world that isn't coming out in our mainstream. And it might be worth becoming aware of that. But it doesn't even really matter. It's not about buying into these other narratives. It's about what are you going to choose. So, guys, I hope there's something in there. There's a lot. I've packed in a lot. And I think in future chats and shows, I might well focus on one system at a time and just give you a bit more of a drill down on what's coming up in that particular system, what might be occurring, just to make it a little easier to navigate. So I suggest listening to this, maybe in chunks, because there's a lot in there. Obviously, I've repeated it from different angles because sometimes that's how we need to hear it. Start to trust yourself more. Start to follow your inner whisperings. Start to get to know your local community. Look at how you can go beyond money. See what you can supply for yourself, food-wise. See maybe how you can clean out your body, health-wise. Look back at a previous show and keep going. It's going to be a ride. It's going to look crazy, but maybe we're the ones that are pushing out the shit for it to be revealed so we can see how things have been going on, what's been going on in the background that we've not been aware of. That's going to bring up a lot of stuff for people. If that does turn out to be true, ride it. Don't get distracted. See what you need to do whilst you're aware that you're connected to those around you. Big love.